Hey everyone, hope you're doing good. Hope you all had a great Christmas and a great New Year's. If you don't know me, my name is Casey Wood. I've had the privilege of being able to grow up at Hope. I've interned there the past 4 summers, and it's just a place that is really special in my heart and a place that I always am going to hold dear. And I actually this year, actually last year, technically now, because in 2020 I decided to move from Lubbock, Texas, where I was going to school at Texas Tech, and I'm now in Springfield, Missouri, where I am pursuing a degree in ministry, and that's a huge testament to what this church has done for me. And so I'm very thankful for y'all that I'm been able to get to this point in my life. And so I'm actually filming this at BBC right now. So I am all the way in Springfield. I'm 10 hours from y'all. And so this is the furthest I've ever lived from home, which if you know me super well, it's kind of crazy that I live this far from home because if you know me, you know that I am the biggest mama's boy out there. Like not exaggerating. And so it's been a little challenging, but thankfully I got to spend the majority of this break with my family and just been able to hang out at the lake. And that's actually where I ended up spending Christmas, and it was just tons of fun. And so we actually started a new tradition last Christmas and carried over to this Christmas, and we call it Make a Gift. And so we draw names out of a hat, and whoever's name you draw, you have to make a gift for them. It has to be handmade, and kind of want to be along the lines of sentimental, but just something that you spent time making yourself. And so I got my sister this year. I drew Chelsea's name, and I had to make Chelsea a gift. And I'm not necessarily the craftiest person there is, so I went to trusty old Pinterest, and I found how to make coasters with pictures of her and her husband, and that's what I did, and it actually turned out really good. So I'm in the coaster business now if you want to hit me up. But yeah, and my mom drew my name, so my mom had to make a gift for me. And I was gonna show y'all what she made me, but I was on a plane today. I'm flying from Dallas to Missouri, and I made it here. I'm in Missouri, but my bag is still in Dallas. So hopefully I'll get that back soon. But that is where the gift my mom made me is. I'll just try to describe it to y'all. Hopefully I can maybe throw up a picture where y'all can see it. But it was a handmade gift, and it was just some pieces of wood, and it was painted, and my mom put a bunch of little nails around, making the outline of Missouri and the outline of Texas, and she roped it in string where you can really see it. And from Missouri to Texas, there's a heart in Missouri, a heart in Texas, and a line connecting them because I live in Missouri now, and everybody else in my family lives in Texas, and so it just showed me that like no matter where I'm at, I'm still connected to my family. Like I still love them a lot, and my mom wrote a really sweet message on the back. And like I said earlier, if you're really wondering, I'm a really big mama's boy, so you might be thinking, did I cry? And the answer is yes. I cried pretty hard. Hey, there's no shame in that. I'm getting choked up right now talking about it, but it was been a great tradition like that our whole family just loves now. We love being able to just see that person who you made a gift for open up that gift because it's fun to see them just so excited because you took time and you took effort on that person and they're able to literally see that. And it's also fun like on the other side seeing someone take time and effort to make a gift for you. And so that kind of ties into what we've been talking about with serving people. It's special when someone sees how much time and effort you put into them. And so I'm going to talk about how we can apply serving to our friends. So just in the grand scheme of things, we need to be a friend that serves our friends. So right off the bat, it's not really easy serving friends, right? Like it's a lot easier said than done. Like I've been hanging out with my best friends and looked at them and like my first thought when I look at my best friends or not, how can I serve this guy today? It's usually can be the opposite sometimes. I know there's multiple occasions of my cousin Jacob, we'd be hanging out and he'd ask me to go downstairs to get him a snack. And I'm like, dude, you got legs, go get it yourself. So like I said, it takes a conscious effort to serve our friends, but it needs to be done. And I think there's a place in the Bible that gives us a great example of how to serve our friends, and that's in Luke chapter 5, starting in verse 17. So that is the story of Jesus healing the paralytic. So I'm going to start reading at verse 17. So on one of those days, as he was teaching, Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting there who had come from every village of Galilee and Judea and from Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was with him to heal. So it starts off with Jesus talking in front of a really big crowd. And so people from all over came. They wanted to see Jesus speak, and they are packed in this tight area. And they're just, as you can guess, the place is really cramped. And so now on to verse 18. And behold, some men were bringing on a bed a man who was paralyzed, and they were seeking to bring him in and lay him before Jesus. So we see a group of men carrying a paralyzed man so they could bring him to Jesus. And that takes a lot of effort, right? They're literally physically carrying a grown man to go see Jesus. And they had to go where this paralyzed man was, physically pick him up, and then take him to Jesus. And that's a great example of them serving their friend. And it's the point I want to focus on. We need to be a friend that goes out of the way for our friends. So that's something that's really easy to overlook in verse 18. These men are already carrying the paralyzed man. They're already in the process of doing it, but we don't see them having to go out of their way to get him. They had to literally go where he was, pick him up physically, and then begin to take him to Jesus. And so I think about it as in my mind is when I first got my license when I was 16 years old. I was the first one in my friend group to get my license, and I was the only one to have my license for a while. And as you might guess, I was giving out a lot of rides, and it was fun at first. Like, I wanted to find any excuse I could to drive. Like, oh, you want me to take you home? Like, no problem. Like, hop in. Or like, you want me to go get you some groceries, Mom? Like, I'll go do that. And it was a lot of fun. But as you might guess, I was giving out a lot of rides, and eventually, I kind of got tired of it. I felt like a taxi driver after a little bit, and it really didn't help that my first truck was a very big, very yellow F-250. So it literally was the same color as the taxi. You could not miss it. But it got to the point where I didn't want to go out of my way to drop off or pick up my friends. School was over. I just wanted to go home. I don't have to go 10 minutes, a whole 10 minutes out of my way. I just wanted to go home and be able to chill out. I didn't want to have to take time and effort to go out of my way for my friends. And so verse 18 kind of helps me put things into perspective, right? I was complaining about having to drive a little bit out of my way to go pick up my friends when these men literally, they physically had to go pick up their friend. So going out of your way to serve friends shows them that you care enough about them to ignore minor inconveniences to still serve them. And so that kind of ties into the second point. We need to be an unconditional friend. So these men didn't just stop at getting the paralytic. So I'm going to read in verse 19 real quick. But finding no way to bring him in because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and let him down in his bed through the tiles into the midst before Jesus. So they get all the way there, and they can't get to Jesus. Like I said earlier, there's a really big crowd. This place is packed. And so they just carried their paralyzed friend all the way there, and they can't even get to Jesus. And it could have been really easy for them to look at their friend and be like, well, man, like, we tried. But that's not what they did. They proceeded to climb on a roof to get their friends to Jesus. So like I said, that brings me to the point of we can't be a friend that helps our friends only when it's convenient for us. We need to be an unconditional friend. So when it was suggested to take the paralyzed man on the roof, they could have easily bowed out. Like, nah, man, the roof, I don't do heights, so I don't think that's going to happen. But that's not what they did. They continued to serve their friends even when conditions got a little tougher. Like I said, we shouldn't be a friend that serves our friend when it's convenient for us. We need to serve our friends even and probably especially when it's hard for them. So they didn't even just stop there. They got all the way up to the roof, and if you look at verse 19, they got to the roof, and they had to literally start ripping and tearing off these roof tiles so they can make a hole to get their friends to Jesus. And that's also another type. Like, we need to be that friend. We need to be friends who will rip and tear through obstacles that are standing in the way of our friends getting to Jesus. And that kind of leads into my third point. At the end of verse 19, we see the paralyzed man being lowered into the midst of Jesus. So I'm going to read it again. But finding no way to bring him in because of the crowd, they went up onto the roof and let him down with his bed through the tiles into the midst before Jesus. So this kind of helps me illustrate the most important point. Like I said, we need to be friends who point our friends to Jesus. So if we look back at verse 18, we see that that's what these men are trying to do from the very beginning. So I'm going to read that again too. And behold, some men were bringing on a bed a man who was paralyzed. And this is the most important part. And they were seeking to bring him and lay him before Jesus. So that's the most crucial part of the story. From the very beginning of the story, the paralytic's friends were not focused on how, in their own power, they could heal their friend. They were focused on getting their friend to a person that could heal them, which is Jesus. And that can be really difficult to do sometimes. I know I personally struggle with it a lot. Whenever I have someone I really care about, like my friends, come to me and just talk about something they're struggling with that they need healing with, I automatically think about how I can help fix that problem. It's usually not, well, how can I point them to Jesus? It's usually, what can I do in my own power to fix this problem for them? And so it kind of boils down to a pride thing of, I want to fix this for my friend because I can. And But at the end of the day, that's not true. Um, we can't fix our friends' problems. We're not sufficient enough to be the solution for their problems. We have to set aside our pride and point them to Jesus. And while we can't serve our friends by healing them, we can serve our friends by pointing them to the healer. So in verse 20, we see Jesus forgive the paralyzed man. It says, and when he saw their faith, he said, "Man, your sins are forgiven." So that's something else I want to point out. Jesus didn't just notice the paralytic's faith. It says when he noticed their faith. So this whole group of friends are like their whole like their faith their faith as a group was noticed, and that's just I think a huge testament to the friends that we need to have. And so after Jesus says this, he forgives him. The Pharisees and scribes are losing their mind, right? They're like, who does this Jesus guy think he is? He does not have the power to do this. So in response, Jesus turns to the paralytic man and tells him to rise and walk, which is exactly what happens. And that's in verses 24 through 26, where it says, but that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. He said to the man who was paralyzed, I say to you, rise, pick up your bed, and go home. And immediately he rose up before them, picked up where he'd been lying on, and went home glorifying God. And amazement seized them all, and they glorified God and were filled with awe, saying, we have seen extraordinary things. So like at the end of that verse 26, it says they were in awe. They were going home saying, we have seen extraordinary things today. And it was an extraordinary thing. A man who could not walk began being able to walk again. And that extraordinary thing would not have happened if that man's friends decided not to serve him that day. So that's just something I think we really need to focus on, is that we need to be friends who serve our friends. And so, yeah, think about how you can serve your friends. I hope y'all have a great week. I miss y'all. I'm so happy I was able to do this. But yeah, have a great new year. See y'all.